Let's talk a little about the analysis of the organization's resources. And of course, there are all kinds of resources, and we're going to go through some of the major areas and discuss how an analysis of those resources might look for an internal analysis. First, we need to talk about human resources. And of course, with human resources, the first thing that we typically think about is leadership. That is, who's running the organization, who's in charge of the organization, and what sorts of, you know, background do they have? What's their past successes and their past failures? And we see this happening all the time when a Wall Street company will have a new CEO or a new president come on board, and of course, the reaction to that new person is typically based on what they have done in the past. Typically, organizations like it when the leadership comes from the same industry as opposed to a different industry. And of course, that's because what works in one industry is very likely not to work in another industry. So someone who has a background in the oil refinery business might not be a good fit for a tech company that is focusing on solar energy. Now, perhaps some of their knowledge and background translates across, but perhaps it doesn't. Right now, the major refining companies, Chevron, Exxon, British Petroleum, and others, are trying to figure out ways to get into the non-oil related energy businesses. And of course, while they are experts in their current field, I'm not sure that they're going to be experts in the new evolving industries that are coming out. Besides the leadership, you need to understand who the other key personnel might be. For a football team, for instance, leadership would be the coaching, but the other key personnel might be the quarterbacks and the linebackers and the other players that are actually on the team, and along with perhaps some of the assistant coaches, or maybe even ownership. And so we need to know who those other key personnel are and who they are and what their background is. I am a big believer in investing in organizations that have great leadership, proven leadership. And then, of course, the other human resources element might be other financial constraints in terms of how many new people we're able to hire, where we are on a succession plan, and all those sorts of things are all part of the human resources aspect of the resources for an organization. So we'd like to know who. As you recall, I had said this before, almost every organization will tell you that their biggest competitive advantage and their biggest strength is their people. Well, we better analyze who their people are. Other resources, there's this issue of brand equity. How much brand equity does any individual brand have? So brand equity is made up of 5 elements. One is awareness. A brand can't have any equity if no one is aware of it. And so our project for this semester, we need to be thinking about what kinds of awareness is there for our particular brand and it's important to understand that awareness is an element of brand equity along with perceived quality. How do the customers perceive the quality of that product? If you've been watching television, the General Insurance Company has been running ads that say, "Oh, because you've watched the ads, you don't think we're a high quality insurance company, but we are." And of course, they're trying to fight a negative, perceived low quality image doing those commercials. I personally doubt that it'll work. Then third is brand loyalty. Do we have brand loyal customers? Brand loyal customers in terms of repeat purchasing, and then brand loyal customers in terms of being brand advocates for us. Next on the list, of course, are associations. What are the other things that we are associated with? Think about T-Mobile. T-Mobile has spent money on multiple stadium and arena sponsorships. And so there's T-Mobile Arena here in Las Vegas, and I was just watching the other day, and it was the T-Mobile Arena in, and I can't remember where the other one was, but I was thinking, you know, it costs a lot of money to do those sponsorships of those arenas, and perhaps that money could be spent on something else. They, of course, are doing it to build associations. And you know, but there are other associations and other things that you might, that you might have, organizations that you might have partnered with, those sorts of things. And then there are these things that we call other assets. And the other assets that build brand equity would be things like physical plants, patents, processing, even things like past successes and failures might fall under the general category of assets. What are the other things that add value to the organization? An example, of course, is the Los Angeles Dodgers play at Dodger Stadium in Chavez Ravine in LA. Well, that's an asset to them. That is part of their brand equity. And so brand equity is really, really important. So, you can think about brand equity in terms of products, and the way that we typically think of brand equity with a product would be, let's just assume for a second that I had 3 cars sitting next to each other, and they were absolutely identical. But one of them had a Ford nameplate on it, one of them had a Toyota nameplate on it, and one of them had a Hyundai nameplate on it. Which of those cars do you think people would be willing to pay the most for? A Toyota, a Ford, or a Hyundai? All the exact same cars, just with different nameplates. That is a measure of brand equity. And so think about brand equity for an organization. It's crucial for us to try to identify any brand equity that an organization might have, and at least think about it on these 5 brand equity categories. Other things. How about distinct competencies? That is, we would like a distinct competency is something that our business unit can do better than anyone else. Okay, we might also have in here physical facilities. We just got done talking a little bit about physical facilities, but the physical facilities, number of franchises. In our category, it might be the number of places you can rent a product, or the number of places you can purchase a product, or the number of stores that we own. And then there are other resources that you might think about that the organization has, and those would fall under the notion of, for instance, patents. Contractual agreements, contracts with the federal government. All those things are additional resources that if we had them, we would like to know about them. So in summary, the organization's resources helps to determine what its capabilities are and what the constraints are on its ability to do things and not do things.